This business is not sponsored by or affiliated with the United States Department of Veterans Affairs or your state's Department of Military and Veterans Affairs or any other federally chartered veterans service organization. Other organizations, including but not limited to your state's Department of Military and Veterans Affairs, a local veteran service organization, and other federally chartered veteran service organizations provide this service free of charge. You may qualify for other veterans benefit services outside the scope of what this business offers. All disability claims for increased ratings are processed by the United States Department of Veterans Affairs. This business cannot expedite the processing of your claim by the United States Department of Veterans Affairs.
Hello, everyone. Happy Wednesday.
Happy Wednesday, veterans. And thank you for spending some time with us today. Before we get started with today's topic, sound off in the comments. Let us know where you're tuning in from, what your branch and your user service is. Welcome, everybody. Welcome home, veterans. Got a jam-packed class, class today here. Open question and answers, yes. All right, I see Kenny Almas, Navy, 90% disabled. Welcome, brother. Yeah. David Neal, from Florida. How you doing, David? I see you over there.
We got Tracy, U.S. Air Force, 15 years. Welcome, Tracy.
Welcome. And don't be shy. Go on and put your comments over there in the comment section. Hey, Michelle. Good to see you out there in Texas. Hey, Norman. Army Hood. You're in good company. I see you out there, Iowa.
Got to be cold for Norman.
Right. I know it's cold out there. How you doing, Tara Brewer, Oklahoma?
Yeah.
All right. David Neal, 80% Army. Cool. I see you out there.
Yeah. Got Troy coming in, Army. All right.
You can give your shout out to a coach too if you got a coach already. I see you, Troy, Army. Got some Navy folks in here. I see you. Apollinaire Garcia, 6 years Navy. I see you over there. How are you there, Gary Beard? Welcome.
Welcome, everyone.
Where you tuning in from?
So we got Vala, Army, 6.5 years, 75 to 82. Welcome, Vala.
Welcome. How you doing, Eddie Thomas? I see you. 82nd Airborne, Army, Hood.
Sort of Army. All right, welcome, Eddie.
Like that. Hey, Barbara Williams, I see you there. Army. A lot of Army today. Army and Navy today. Few Air Force.
We got Terry coming in from Indiana, Navy. Welcome, Terry.
Welcome. Get your questions and answers ready because we about to answer some for you. Welcome. I see a lot of Army. Here you go. I see Army 3 years. Jason Kane. How you doing there, Valerie? I see you.
All right. Angela, U.S. Air Force and Reserve, 16 years. Welcome, Angela.
And don't forget to add your question when we get started for the Q&A. Don't forget to add your questions here, okay? This is the same place.
Jerry, Air Force non-vet. Welcome, Jerry.
I see you, Jerry. Yeah, 90%. Looking for 100. I like it.
A lot of Army and Navy coming in today. Welcome.
Yeah, it's full of Army and Navy folks. I saw maybe 1 or 2 Air Force.
Yeah.
Come on, I know the other branches is out there. Go on ahead, sound off over there in the comments. I see y'all. Hey,
James coming in from Tennessee, our token Marine. Welcome, James.
There you go. Welcome, Danetta Kite. I see you in there. 3 years Air Force. There they go. I see Air Guard. Cyprian Isham. I see you. 25 years Air Guard, 90%. Welcome. All right. So go ahead and keep on going with that. And don't forget to put your questions over there. We'll go ahead and get this thing started. And I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Coach Charles Harris. All right. Army guy, Army. I did the National Guard, Reserves, both active as well. I did it all. I was an officer and enlisted, and I'm 100% permanent in total. Okay. I did not go through the elite membership program here. However, I still got there. Thank God. And then what brought me here to VA Claims Insider? I'm going to tell you right off the bat. One of the things that I witnessed when I got out of the service back in 2012 was the knowledge gap between the VA claims process and our military service folks, right? It was non-existing. They had just started ramping up certain programs to get us right, but nothing was there that was concrete that could help every veteran that got out of service. And so one of the things that I was doing was helping veterans navigate that by myself. But in 2022, I ran into a buddy of mine, and he's married. He's married to one of my co-workers here. Y'all might know her, Coach Rachel Seabury. Introduced this beautiful company to me, man. And the mission here to educate veterans on the VA claims process was just tremendous. I had to jump on board. That's my calling right there. Is to educate you guys on this process, and I live for it every day. Yeah, and I love it. And I'm here also with my co-host here, Coach James Burke.
Thank you, Coach Charles. So good morning, everyone. I'm Coach James Bursai. It's great to be here. So as you can probably tell, I'm a Navy veteran. I spent 12 years in the Navy, but 6 of those were Fleet Marine Force, so a bit of a diversified career. Spent some time in the big gray things that float around on the ocean, but then also spent some time carrying a ruck and humping around. So it was fantastic in my time in the military, and then got out, started learning, exploring, going through the VA disability process, working with other veterans, had a great experience when it came to networking, just having that opportunity to share about experiences, where we've been in the military, kind of learning those particular best practices, those things you can do when it comes to pursuing VA ratings. So I was not actually an elite member before I came to VA Claims Insider, just kind of figuring things out for myself, talking to other veterans, picking up those things that might be relevant, things I could explore, learn more about. So it took me about 7 years to go through the VA disability process. And then I heard about this company called VA Claims Insider. And I said, hey, I want to learn more about that. What's going on with that? Is that a networking organization? What is the deal with that? And started talking to some folks, learning more about the organization, the coaches, and, what coaches do when it comes to coaching and education for veterans and pursuing additional VA disability benefits. And at that point, I said, hey, sign me up. So I was able to speak to folks, have the opportunity to come on board as a coach and start coaching and educating veterans myself, taking those experiences, those best practices, being able to speak to veterans in terms of, those particular best practices, those things that might be relevant to their experience, and, what they can do when it comes to exploring additional VA benefits. So it has been a fantastic year for me as a coach, getting to speak with veterans so far.
Definitely. All right. Well, that's us in a nutshell. And like I say, we're going to go ahead and finish on with the program today. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the VACI Elite program, right? And as I'm going through this material here, please don't forget to put your questions over in the chat, because we're going to go to today's session is a question and answer session where we're going to answer any questions that you guys would have about the VA process, anything dealing with the VA claims process. Okay. And so let's just talk about the Elite program, right? What is it, right? So basically the VA Claims Insider, we use the SIM method. And I'm going to break that SIM, what SIM means, SEM, Sierra Echo Mike, right? What does that mean? All right, the S is for strategy, right? You'll work with your coach once you're in the Elite membership program to come up with a strategy that's going to help you navigate that VA claims process, all right? We use that's what the S stands for. The E is for education. We have tons of material on our website, our blogs, YouTube, as well as Facebook Live, pre-recorded material, Doc on the Road, all of those all of those different types of training, the classes that we give. And we use that education as well as part of the SIM method. That's what the E is for. And then M is for medical evidence, right? Medical evidence wins claims, right? Whether it's a Nexus letter, a DBQ, or it's service records or getting to the doctor to get a diagnosis, medical evidence definitely wins claims. Now, within the Elite Membership Program, you get a one-on-one coaching with the coach. You get assigned a coach, right? And if you do get called for a discovery call and you want to pick myself, Coach Charles Harris, or Coach James Burside as your coach, you can let these guys know when you call to sign up, right? And get that one-on-one coaching. You and your coach are going to dive through your records, your service records, dive through what your previous claims, your claim letters, all your information. Just to make sure that your strategy is chosen properly. Okay. And in that strategy, they're going to let you know whether you need to get back to the doctor, whether you need a Nexus letter. You will have a good picture on what you need to do to go next. The strategy session runs about 15, 20 minutes, right? You and your coach. And then there is a claim submission education, right? As well as CMP education. What those entail. The claim submission education is you and your coach on the phone or either on a Teams call, basically going through the different steps that you need to go learn and be educated about submitting your claim. So you're not going to have to do that kind of stuff alone, right? The CMP education, right? 1 to 3 days prior to your actual CMP education class. I mean, your CMP class, your CMP. You'll be able to jump on your coach's calendar, chat with your coach on some educational pieces. Go over the different your symptoms, how to talk about your symptoms on their worst day. Different things that you're going to know, what you're going to expect when you're going through that CMP. We also have live classes to accompany with that as well, right? And those are via Teams. We do those, and there's a vaccine1.com calendar that we use, that we keep those classes already scheduled on. You get up to 3 live classes multiple times throughout the week, all right? Coffee with the coaches. I got to tell you, that's one of the best classes, one of the best settings that you can be in. You got a room full of veterans that are sitting there waiting, right, for their claims process or getting ready to go through a CMP. Lots of questions get answered in that form because you got a room full of coaching managers, coaches, and QA just waiting to answer those questions. And then the mental health and medical health examinations. Basically, both of those give you the what to expect when going through the CMP process, that particular, the mental health as well as the medical, what to expect in those, right? And how to educate yourself further about how to talk about your symptoms while you get in there. Those are all available within that Elite Membership Program. Now, as far as a discovery call, all you got to do, you want to learn more, schedule that discovery call and talk one-on-one with our team members by going through the VAClaimsinsider.com. Go.VAClaimsinsider.com. That's where you want to go ahead and set up your strategy call. All right. Reach out to our organization at VAClaimsinsider.com. We'd love to partner with you and your VA claims on your VA claims journey. Okay. Reach out, get yourself a discovery call. You can choose myself, you can choose James, or any other coach that you might have come in contact with. You can be specific and let them know. Okay. And now we're going to go ahead and open it up for the discussion topic, question and answer. So I hope you guys put your questions in the comments so that we can jump right on into it and get down to the real nitty-gritty while we're here today.
Awesome. Thank you, Coach Charles. So I see a question here from Sally. Is this for spouses too? I'm in Texas. So when it comes to the conversation about learning more about education on the VA disability process, additional benefits, we're glad to have you here. If you're getting educated, you're asking questions, you're getting engaged. So that way when you're speaking with your veteran, when you're able to, inform them about the possibility of additional benefits, spouses are certainly welcome to join us here. So that way, you can have that opportunity, talk about education, talk about coaching. Certainly appreciate you joining us. Thank you, Sally.
All right. See here. Going through these questions. Make sure you get your questions in, right? So I see one here says, I got 100% doing it myself, but try, and this is from Eddie Geist, right? I got 100%, I got 80% doing it myself, but trying to get to 100% is hard. I just want to tell you something about that. Hard is, it may seem hard to do and difficult, but I'm gonna tell you like this: don't give up. All right. It is not, it may be a little bit difficult, might be a little bit challenging. You might need more education. All right. Get yourself a discovery call, brother. Get that discovery call, get you a coach, and stop struggling by yourself. Right. Let us educate you here from VA Claims Insider on the process and shine some light on some things. Definitely.
Yeah, if I could jump in on that, Coach Charles.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when it comes to point of education, Eddie, only 30% of veterans have disability ratings. So you're already getting things moving forward. You're always taking those right steps to learn, to start the process. So as Coach Charles said, setting that discovery call, getting into that education in terms of what options you might have, that's where you can continue that momentum to moving towards that particular goal that you might have. So thank you for sharing, Eddie.
Definitely. I see you there, Rick Baven. Rick Baven. You say, why do they talk up the PACT Act, then fight you every step of the way? Well, I'll keep it real with you, Rick. I don't think they fight you every step of the way, but at the same time, if the claim is not properly put in, right, you can look for a denial. If you don't have evidence, right, you got to think about what is required to be submit a fully developed claim. You got three things, right? You got to have a diagnosis. A lot of times, veterans they think that they diagnose themselves. I got these sinus issues. I'm just going to go over here and do this, or I got this hearing loss, and I'm just going to go ahead and file this claim, or I got PTSD, so I should be able to file a claim without a diagnosis, right? Without a diagnosis, there's no medical professional saying, hey, this individual has this condition. So that's the first thing you got to have. It's required to have a diagnosis, right? The second thing is an in-service stress or event that caused that, right? That diagnosis. And then that third thing is a nexus, right? And a lot of times when folks get out of the service, it's been, years past the time they've gotten out of service, right? That first 12 months after you get out is very important, right? That's what once that first 12 months is gone, you're looking at possibly needing a nexus for anything that you're claiming for service connection, right? So those three things gotta be present, before you submit a claim. And a lot of times when folks are trying to go after those presumptive conditions, they don't have those things, one or two of those things, or maybe none of those things in place. So you'll get a denial, and it may feel like you're constantly struggling with the VA because you're trying to do it on your own. Don't do it on your own. Go ahead and schedule that discovery call. Get you a coach. Let them educate you on that VA claims process. Okay. You want to add anything to that, James?
No, I think you covered it pretty well. Folks, just keep in mind that the VA disability process is broken down by the 38 Code of Federal Regulations. This is a kind of legalistic process. There are certain requirements. So getting educated on, that federal code that governs the whole things, because it may feel personal. It may feel like the VA is fighting you, but it may just come down to a procedural step. So getting educated on that procedure, those steps involved, that can be really critical when it comes to having a good understanding of the process and what goes into each step to make sure that you're not going to have any obstacles that can come back and hold you up.
All right.
I see a question here from Fred Hawkins. So welcome, Fred. Can you add a supplemental claim after a higher level review, or do you have to go to the Board of Veterans Appeals? Great question, Fred. So you absolutely can add a supplemental claim after a higher level review. So when it comes to those particular steps, those options available to you, after you might have had a decision letter where you didn't get a rating on a particular claim, you have a few options. As Fred says, you can pursue a higher level review where you want to have a conversation with the VA about the evidence that you've already submitted. Or is it a supplemental case where you're adding new and relevant evidence to kind of expand the scope of the evidence in support of that claim? And in some extreme cases, where it really gets down to things, you can go down that Board of Veterans Appeal route. But, this is where discovery call can be really useful. Having that opportunity to be one-on-one with a coach, kind of break down where you're at and what makes the most sense when it comes to that next steps in the claims process. So great question, Fred. Thank you.
Definitely. Also, like James was saying too, just to add to it, that supplemental claim. So say you're going through that HOR and they deny it, and say they instead of you need to find that new and relevant evidence to do that supplemental claim. Take that letter, go through that letter with your coach, and if you don't have a coach, go through that letter. Make sure you go through that with a fine-tooth comb. Make sure all of your documents are listed in there. You're right. You got to make sure your documents are listed in there, that you submitted all your evidence and everything as well, right? But also that new and relevant evidence, you got to make sure if you do not submit new and relevant evidence, they will deny it and close it again. So get with your coach, make sure you got that proper evidence that's needed. You might need a migraine buddy, you might need a log or something, or you might need a new diagnosis or something like that. Go through it with a fine-tooth comb, that decision letter. Make sure that you're doing, when you're going after that supplemental claim, that evidence is relevant and new. Okay. There we go.
And real quick, Coach Charles, if I can follow on with that, Troy had a question that goes forward with that. It says, how many supplemental claims can you submit? So when it comes to the supplemental claims, you have a lot of options as to, continuously adding new and relevant evidence, just like Coach Charles was saying. Maybe it's a new diagnosis, maybe it's a migraine buddy, maybe it's a nexus letter, all depending on the context of what was provided in that decision letter as to what the VA is looking for that particular claim. Now, again, with that, does it make sense to have multiple supplemental claims, or does it make more sense to schedule a higher level review? Or maybe there's something else that you can consider in that particular process to increase the likelihood of moving forward, having a rating assigned for that particular condition with that claim. So in this case, having that discovery call, having that one-on-one conversation with your coach to where they can kind of pull out those details as to what makes sense. Is it another supplemental situation, or are you looking at a higher level review to really highlight the evidence that you've already submitted with the VA, get them to understand what you're trying to present to them to answer those questions that they left in that previous decision letter? So thank you, Troy. Great question. Anything to add to that, Coach Charles?
Oh, no. Nope. Nope. Perfect. And then next one, we got Rob Smith. I see you there. Migraines reduced from 50 to 30%, in turn overall from 90% to 80%. If I appeal, could benefits be further reduced? Good question, right? So I'm gonna keep it real with you, right? This process is arduous, it's hard, and I wouldn't navigate it by myself. Okay. I would definitely make a discovery call and choose a coach that helped me out through this process. One reason is because of this situation right here. Submitting your claim incorrectly could lead to reduction, right? The one thing that the VA does, they do reviews, and they also check to make sure that it's, to see if you've gotten better. So depending on how this reduction was, because there's not a lot of information in this question, but depending on how that reduction was done, whether it was a review or if you submitted a claim and then they went down, it depends on how they reduced you there. But they can, at any point, That can happen. That is a likelihood. However, the way that you beat that, the way that you battle that, and submit a fully developed claim is doing that. Submitting a fully developed claim, making sure that you crossing your T's and dotting your I's, right? Making sure all of your medical evidence is credible, making sure that you submit, and then sometimes it still happens, right? That you get a negative letter, or you get denied, or whatever the case is, right? There's appeal processes in place that helps veterans. That's why those processes are there, because not all the times the VA gets it right. Sometimes they do get it wrong, But the best way to navigate that in this process, go on and get yourself a coach. Make that discovery call, choose your coach, so that that that's going to lessen your fears of being reduced because you're going after your claims. Now, if you sit back and don't go after your claims, you're not going to achieve the actual rating that you want to retrieve. If 100% is your goal and you quit because you think that you're going to go ahead and get reduced, then you're stuck right there. You won't ever achieve that goal. But if you go ahead and get educated on the process, submit the proper claims that you need to, go through the rigmarole, right? It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. It's not going to happen overnight, right? Set the expectations for yourself as you're going through this process, and know that it's going to take a little bit to get that medical evidence, to get it in there, to get that claim in there properly, right? And that's going to mitigate those reduction moments, right? That's what's going to happen. You want to add something to that, James?
If I could summarize, there are no guarantees with the VA. The VA is just people. People make mistakes, but there is a process. And in taking a look at the process, at the those things that come back from the VA, they lay out a roadmap for the possibility of success, of seeing that rating come back. So in having coaching, education, you're going to develop the knowledge and the confidence to know what to expect and what your goal is with each step of the process. So that way, even though there might not be any guarantees, you can be as educated and as knowledgeable as possible on those particular steps in the process to know what your options are. Great question. So I see a question here. Pig Life, looks like somebody likes the M60. I've got an intent to file since April. Is it still a good time to claim sleep apnea? Do I talk to my VA doctor to help with connecting this to PTSD? Will they help? Thank you, gentlemen. USMC 0311. Great question. So, quick point on, towards the end here, when it comes to VA doctors. Now, when it comes to VA healthcare, VA healthcare and the VA disability side of things, they're separate departments. So even though they are both under the VA, they're separate departments. But in some cases, VA doctors may consider providing medical evidence in support of claim a conflict of interest. So it's kind of contextual. Some doctors will support, others not so much. So you kind of have to take a look at that on a case-by-case basis. So that way you have an understanding of your providers and what they're willing to do for you. Now, when it comes to the connection to mental health and the possibilities there, understanding that medical nexus or that medical rationale as to why mental health could lead to the development of sleep apnea, that's a fantastic educational opportunity to kind of understand how those things might potentially be connected. So having that discovery call, having that conversation with your coach, getting educated as to, what might be the right step when it comes to that. Maybe there's other things. There's other potential medical nexes that you could also consider when it comes to that particular claim. Now, one thing to keep in mind with your intent to file, the intent to file is only good for 12 months. So if you're coming up on, you've got about 5 weeks before that intent to file is going to lapse. So if you have that medical evidence, if you have that opportunity to get educated, make sure everything lines up and it makes sense to move forward that claim, then as you are getting closer to that deadline, taking a close look at that, having clear understanding of those things, having that educational opportunity to speak with your coach, they can lay out what makes sense, or if there are other steps that you can take when it comes to looking at a sleep apnea claim before your intent to file lapses. So great question there. Thank you. Anything to add to that, Coach Charles?
Oh, no, you hit it, brother. You hit it. All right. I see one here. See Neil Williams, right? It says Neil dot Williams 68, right? How do I go about getting a nexus letter for my civilian doctor? All right. Typically, I'm thinking you asking how do you get one from them, and simply you would ask that question if they provide that service. Now, if they don't provide that service, Telemedica does have a Nexus writing and a DBQ writing section. They that you could potentially use as well. So, but you would definitely be direct on what you're asking for with your doctor, letting them know what your situation is up front. Not everybody's skilled at writing Nexus letters. I'm just going to point that out there. However, Telemedica, that's all they do. That's what they do. They get that. They work on that medical evidence for the veterans. They're not a full up, facility where folks are coming in with doctor's appointments and so forth. So just keep in mind, if you do need somebody, Telemedica's there for you. Reach out to your coach. And if you don't have a coach, get you a discovery card so you can get a coach. But yeah, being specific on what you're looking for. And if they are not the place for you to get it, don't forget that discovery call.
All right. I see one from Joni Donaldson here. Why did I not get compensation for PACT Act illnesses and disability? I was rated for these illnesses, which was originally denied when I was discharged. So, a couple of points there, Joni. So you say when you were rated for these illnesses, do you mean that you've got a diagnosis? So that way it's in your medical records is these are things that you have, or, is that a 0% rating? You need to take a look at exactly what you're dealing with when it comes to those distinctions for a rating or a diagnosis with the illness. Now, when it comes to the PACT Act itself, there are a few procedural steps there to make sure that the VA understands what you're asking for with that particular claim, because the PACT Act typically relates to hazardous material exposure. So, is that hazardous material exposure documented? Is that something that you included in your evidence with that particular claim? And what steps are available to you if you're not getting that compensation? Is there some sort of, if you have ratings for those, but you're not being compensated based off of your combined rating, maybe there's an administrative error that you can just clear up and you don't even have to take any follow-on steps. So having that discovery call, presenting those particular details with your coach to where they can review all of that with you, get a clear understanding of where you're at and what that next step would be, because maybe it's a supplemental claim where you're presenting new and relevant evidence based off of hazardous material exposure, or maybe it's just as easy as picking up a phone call saying, hey, you made an administrative mistake, I have this rating, but I'm only being compensated at this level. So what do we need to do in order to fix that? So you got a couple of steps there, Joni, that you can take a look at. But best bet, setting that discovery call, speaking with your coach, so that way they can lay out, a clear picture for you as to where you're at and what would make sense when it comes to those next steps. Thank you, Joni.
All right. And I see one in here from Tracy Lindsay. I know we've been talking about schedule that discovery call. If you want to schedule a discovery call, go ahead and go to go.vaclaimsinsider.com. That's where you go right there and you can schedule your discovery call. Yep. You can actually choose your coach. If you want to request myself, you want to request James, go ahead and do that when you make that call. Go.vaclaimsinsider.com. Okay.
Good stuff. I see a question here from Ron. What should I prepare for to go to my first scheduled meeting with my primary care provider in a new city? I've moved. I was recently given a 90% rating. So, Ron, when it comes to the exam preparation, evaluation and preparation, any medical appointment, there are a few best practices, some things that you can consider. Now, this is your primary care provider, so it's primarily focusing on treatment. Now, with that in mind, what are your focuses with treatment? But when it comes to having those conversations, potentially getting more medical evidence in support of the claims process, having a clear understanding, being educated as to what claims, make sense for you to pursue, what is that clear next step in terms of, those claims that could potentially result in an overall combined rating increase. And then what is the medical evidence that you need there, preparing to have that particular conversation with that primary care provider. Maybe you need a referral to a specialist. So, is that something that that primary care provider, you can have that discussion with them in terms of those things that you're looking to have scheduled? Is there, a particular specialist you need to see for your treatment? So having that clear picture in terms of, what are those treatment requirements? Because we're always going to tell you to get to the doctor, make sure you're getting the treatment you need, but then also having a clear understanding of that next step, potentially setting a discovery call, talking to your coach in terms of game plan and strategy, what makes sense for that next claim, and what medical evidence you would need in support of that particular claim can really kind of tighten up that, that particular focus for the conversation that you would have with the primary care provider. Coach Charles, anything to add to that one?
Nah, you hit it on the head, brother. You hit it on the head. All right. We got one in here from Jason Kane 7331. Jason Kane 7331. All right. I am at 0% for sinusitis and have started treatment with the VA. Do I need to go to the VA every time I have a flare-up for 30% if I already have treatment? You can choose where you want to go for your treatment. It's not mandatory to get treatment from the VA, right? You can be seen wherever you want to be seen for your treatment. So just know that. Now, me personally, what I've done in my past, I like to keep my care, at the VA because it's cataloged right there, everything within the VBA, just in case I had to go do a CMP. But I'm not even doing CMPs anymore, so my stuff is all over the place too. But you get to choose where you want to get your care from for sure. But you got care at the VA. They're paying for it 100%, paying for it all there if you're over 50%. But if you got to get care elsewhere, it's no problem for you to get care elsewhere either. Maintain your records though. Just because you're getting stuff done out there doesn't mean that the VA doesn't need to know eventually, or if you're still fighting for your claims, that you want to make sure you keep your records updated. So when you start seeing folks out other facilities and other doctors for your conditions that your service connected for, got to remember to marry those records back up. Anything showing increase, anything showing worsening, or anything like that, keep your records up to date when you do that. Anything you want to add, bro?
Only other thought I had was, to your fantastic point of documenting everything, take advantage of the My Healthy Vet communication on the VA website. There's a messaging option where you can message your provider. So if you have a flare up, you're saying, hey, I'm dealing with sinusitis, I had to get some counter medication. You can document that by sending that provider a message. So when it comes to Coach Charles' point, document, get that medical evidence. There are a lot of ways that you can do that you might not even be aware of. So communication with your provider can certainly meet that requirement.
Hey, Henry, I see you out there. Henry Franklin, I see you. Loaded question, right? I have 10%. How can I get to 100%? I tell you one thing, knowing that VA claim system and talking about your conditions on their worst day, educating yourself up with the process. You can use the SIM process. You can get you a coach here at VA Claims Insider. All you got to do is go.vaclaimsinsider.com. You can choose one. But knowing that process, being educated on that process and submitting fully developed claims for your conditions and being able to talk about those conditions on their worst day. The CMP exam is the most important day of the VA claims process. So getting through that successfully is key, right? Being educated on that and being able to get in there and do the things that you need to get done. Knowing knowing what to expect when going to those type of exams. Okay. A lot of things play a part into getting from 10 to 100%. You got to have the conditions, right? You got to have the diagnoses, right? You got to have the current treatment, right? You got to have the service connection. You got to have that collusive triangle. Those three things that I talked about in the beginning, for a fully developed claim. And the best way to do this, man, get you a coach. Make that discovery call. Go to go.vaclaimsinsider.com. Get you that coach so you can stop waiting at 10% and start working towards whatever goal it is. Because one of the things that VA Claims Insiders do is we specialize in helping veterans and educating veterans on how to reach their goals. So just so you know. You want to add something to that?
I think you crushed it, Coach.
Cool.
All right. So I see a question here from Kevin M. Wait. Welcome, Kevin. Why are IBS claims for an increase taking so long for other claims that are settled? So IBS still on step 3. So I think, Kevin, what you're saying is, why is this particular claim taking so long when my other claims were a lot faster? Why is it still stuck on this step? So going back to what I was saying earlier, there are no guarantees with the VA. The VA is just people. Now, with each particular claim, there are a variety of different complexities and different factors. So, maybe that evaluator is taking a look at your particular context, your particular case. They need to get more information that they're doing things internally. Maybe they're comparing your case versus other cases. Maybe there's something in there when it came to that particular medical evidence that they wanted to make sure from a medical standpoint aligned with the particular criteria for the 38 CFR. So that's a long way of saying there are a lot of different factors, even internal administrative processes. Sometimes veterans will submit 10, 12 claims at a time, and they say, hey, why is this taking so long versus my buddy who submitted one claim and got an answer back in a month. So, that's because of the way the VA does things internally with administration sometimes. So a lot of different factors with your unique claim that could be relevant. So sometimes, depending on the complexity of the claim, a condition like sleep apnea would be considered complex. Those can take longer for the VA to go through, validate everything from a medical standpoint, and be able to provide a decision when it comes to that particular claim. So if there's any questions on the details, the evidence that was submitted, you can set up that discovery call, go through all of those things, have the conversation with a coach to where they can kind of lay out all the particulars that might be relevant in your unique case. Anything to add to that, Coach?
No, sir. You hit it. I got one here with Eddie Thomas. I'm not sure if we hit this one yet, but what can be done about former denials, back, sleep, apnea, GERD, and migraines? Okay, denials. So in general, even if you didn't put a condition on there, if you got a denial, what can be done? First things first, you want to go over that decision letter. Acquire that decision letter and then go through it with a fine-tooth comb. As Coach James said earlier, there's detailed instructions in those things that can highlight a roadmap to potential success, right? They're going to let you know what's missing and so forth. And now they do a lot of cutting and pastes in there and stuff like that. So it's probably best to go through it with someone that knows exactly what they're looking at. Schedule that discovery call, get you a coach to help you navigate this process. There are appeals that can happen, right? Initial appeals, like for instance, if you submitted a brand new claim and they denied you, but the evidence is still in there proving that you have this condition and it's service connected, you could potentially do an HLR. So the appeals road could potentially happen, right? All throughout the claim process. Either it's a HLR, if it's within 12 months of them denying, it could be a higher level review, HLR, right? Or it could be just missing one or two things. Maybe they're missing nexus letters, or maybe they're missing diagnosis. Whatever the case is, you want to make sure whatever's missing when you get ready to do that supplemental claim, that new and relevant evidence is introduced, right? I can recommend right now, James, Eddie, go on and get you a discovery call. Don't suffer no more. Don't beat your head up about this. Okay, if you got denials for back, sleep apnea, GERD, migraines, it's time to see what else to do with those. Let's do it.
Great stuff. Great stuff. Thank you, Coach. I see a question here from Chrome Dome 456. I am being compensated on a 30% rating. I recently found out that my rating was moved up 10% without my knowledge. I don't know how long this increase has been in place. Why no compensation? So, Chrome Dome, great question. So, there are a couple of things to keep in mind. Veterans have an overall compensation rate that you are being compensated at, but you also have a raw score. So you might see a rating increase, but that might not result in an overall combined rating increase. So your combined rating increase can only go up or down by 10%. So 30 to 40% or 40 back down to 30%. So if you saw a 10% rating increase, that might not increase your raw score enough to actually result in a combined rating increase. So like some veterans were talking about earlier, hey, why is it so hard to go from 90 to 100%? It's because of that raw score and the difference in your overall combined rating increase based off of the way the VA math works. Because with VA math, 2 plus 2 doesn't always equal 4. So having that conversation to where you can break down how the VA math works, where you're at with your combined rating versus your raw score can really shed a lot of light when it comes to the VA process. So having that discovery call, talking about those details, where you're at, where you could potentially get to when it comes to your combined rating, your raw score, and VA math, that can really be valuable for you as a veteran. Great question. Thank you.
All right. Let's see. I got one here. Let's see here. Frank Berman says here, I have a CMP exam for mental health anxiety coming up. Do you recommend in-person or telehealth for the diagnosis? Okay. So my recommendation, personally for me, I like the ones where I'm a telehealth guy. I like those. I feel more comfortable in my own home. It depends on where you feel the most comfortable, right? I like being in my own space because it's mine and I can control the entrance and the exits, and that's just me in my comfort zone. Whatever your comfort zone is, that's what you choose, either to go walk on in there or do the telehealth. You got to choose what you feel more comfortable with. Okay. One of the things that I do know about that telehealth is a little bit more restricted, right? Because you're just a silhouette. They're not there looking at you, your face, your body movements, or you tapping your feet and things going under the table. One thing that I recommend is being vocal about everything that's going on in a room if you're doing that telehealth. Okay. But at the same time, you got to choose what you feel more comfortable about. Either one is going to do the job. Okay. What you got to say about that one there, James? I see you.
I mean, you covered so much of it, Coach. Just a reminder, when it comes to CMP exams, you can set up calls with your coach to get ready for CMP exams, so that way when you have these kind of questions, you can get educated. You can have that knowledge and confidence as to what to expect, what your goal would be with each exam. So, good stuff, Coach.
Ooh.
Yeah, kind of following along with that, Larry's got a question. I have a virtual compensation and pension exam. So, Larry Cooper, I have a virtual compensation and pension exam coming up regarding a bum knee. I filed this claim back in 2020, but I was denied. I appealed. What should I expect? During my service time, I wore combat boots during physical training. Should I mention this? I currently have knee injections every 3 months. So great question, Larry. Thank you for sharing this. So first off, you're saying this is a virtual examination for an orthopedic condition. So that's a little bit unusual because typically for orthopedic conditions, they want to have a provider to where, like Coach was saying, they can take a look at you, see everything that's going on. So in this particular case, it might make sense for you to reach out to the VA and say, hey, do I actually need an in-person exam for this particular condition? Now, to what you're saying, you filed this claim back in 2020, but I was denied. What should I expect? So with the CMP exam, that's going to be an administrative exam for compensation. So they're going to take a look at what they call a disability benefits questionnaire to review all the criteria when it relates to that particular condition for that particular part of the body. So you can take a look, as to what the criteria would be for that. You can also set up that discovery call, have a conversation with a coach to where they can go through, all of those particular best practices for a CMP exam. Those things when it comes to the criteria for the claim, walk you through that disability benefits questionnaire, and then again, kind of circle back best practices and expectations. But when it comes to mentioning things like wearing combat boots, having injections, covering that medical history, that's certainly going to be something valuable in that particular part of the process. So anything to add to that, Coach?
No. Good stuff there too, Coach. Good stuff there too. I got one in here from Douglas Stupka. At Douglas Stupka. You're asking a question about what your percentages added up to. That's 100% right there, right? Put those into, there's an actual calculator on our website, vaclaimsinsider.com, where you can search VA claims disability calculator and plug your numbers in there, and you'll get it'll spit it out for you right there. You don't have to worry about the VA math. It'll do it for you. But yeah, I got 100 off of that. Actually 95.0, right? 95.0. Be correct. Thank you there, John Trump. I see you there, brother. Good news story. I got with good morning, guys. You helped me get to 100%. It was a pleasure. Love doing it. Do it again all the time. That's what we do. Not saying that we can guarantee that 100% for everybody, but at the same time, in your case, John, it wound it up there, and you were successful, right? We educated, right? Good job for you and for your family. Congratulations to you, brother. All right. And if we don't get to your questions today, the team behind the scenes that's doing all of the broadcast and everything, they're going to reach out to you. They still will be going through these after we're done. We got like about 7 more minutes in there. Make sure you put your questions in there for us to get at while we're still here answering. Myself and James, this is something that we love doing, and if we can educate you on this call right here, that's everything to us, right? Oh, yeah. And if you don't have a coach, go on and get you a coach. That discovery call. What's the website? Go.vaclaims.com. All right. Get yourself, go through the discovery call. And if you want myself, Coach Charles, or you want Coach James, let them know during that discovery call. And they'll sign you right on up. Okay. Yeah. Don't struggle on this stuff on your own.
So I see a question here from Lynette Williams. Do the current partial government shutdowns have an effect on the VA approving claims? In other words, is there a delay? Great question, Lynette. So what you may see is your VA regional centers may be affected by the shutdown. So when it comes to some documents, some services with the actual in-person regional centers, there might be some shutdown. There might be some delays there. But when it comes to the VA disability process, that is not affected by partial government shutdowns, nor is VA disability compensation. So if you are interested in pursuing a claim, even with a partial government shutdown, there are still things that you can do to continue to move the process forward. There might be some delays when it comes to getting some certain documentation, some certain records in support of the process. But if you already have that momentum, you're already moving forward, you already have that game plan and strategy for those steps that you can take, then by all means, you can continue to move forward without really having, to concern yourself with those potential delays. Great question. Thank you, Lynette.
Mhm. I got Catherine Elaine Steffens. I see you there. How you doing, Catherine? It's I have been diagnosed with tinnitus, hearing loss. Is having headaches a secondary to tinnitus? Have had headaches for years, now every day. Can you get compensated for that as well? And as well as, can anxiety be part of the claim? So let's start. Let's load it. This one's loaded. So the first part here, it says the headaches, can they be secondary to tinnitus? Yes. In short answer, yes. Things that have to transpire in between that: service connection, diagnosis, right? And the best way to look at this is to make sure everything's in line. You want to make sure you have a diagnosis. You want to make sure there's a service connection. And if you've been out of the service more than 12 months, yeah, you're most likely looking at possibly needing a nexus letter with that. And I say get with your coach. And if you don't have a coach, have a discovery call, because some light can be shed on a lot of this process and alleviate a lot of these questions that you have. Right? Get that coach. And then, can you get compensated for that? Yes, you can. It's a maximum rating for migraines or headaches secondary to tinnitus. You're looking at a maximum rating of 50%. If you're having 2 or more headaches a month, and it poses an economic impact, and there's your headaches are prostrating, right? And so you definitely want to get with your coach to check that out. And then, can you get compensated for that as well, and as well as anxiety be a part of that? Well, so as far as anxiety, right? Yes, you can put in a claim for anxiety secondary to tinnitus as well, right? And we call that a lifestyle impact claim here, right? And basically, you would work with your coach, get educated on how to actually go through that process. You would definitely need a psych evaluation or a mental health evaluation done. But definitely, hey, don't struggle on this by yourself. Make that discovery call. Go.vaclaimsinsider.com. Get you assigned a coach so that they can help you navigate and educate you on this whole process. All right. You sound like, yeah, that's a loaded question right there, and we're ready for that here. Our coaches are top notch. We're experts in this process. Go on and reach out.
Yeah, I have to slow you down a little bit there, Coach Charles, because we're getting near the top of the hour. So appreciate you sharing everything there. Veterans, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for all of your questions. It was fantastic to see all of those included in here. And as Coach Charles was saying, if we didn't have an opportunity to provide you a response, don't worry, somebody will be able to provide you an answer to that. Now, we're veterans. Nobody fights alone. So stay in touch. If you served, you deserve. If there are those conditions associated with your military service, don't stop. Don't give up the fight. Nobody fights alone. You can reach out, set up that discovery call, get set up with a coach. So that way you have that battle buddy, swim buddy, however you refer to it, based off of your military experience. You have that coach there when it comes to the game plan and strategy for the VA disability process. Now, you can also engage with us. We have a fantastic blog that you can take a look at. There are tons of research articles for steps in the process, different conditions, different forms. You can start that research, start that education process. We are also available on your favorite socials. So YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, you can check us out there for long videos, short videos. If you have that time, you can also take advantage of that. We also have the opportunity, you can take a look at our founder, Brian Reese. He has several books out there when it comes to the VA disability process that you can take a look at, learn about his story and how VA Claims Insider got started. And when it comes to coaching and education and how we kind of came along this particular path. So again, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been great to see your questions, have an opportunity to engage with you. So, Coach Charles, anything to add before we're done here today?
No, you hit it on the head, brother. Hey, thank you guys for joining in. God bless you, and make that discovery call.